Hi, YouTube. As expected, we're coming back today to continue reading 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. I will be your guest reader today. Uh, you recently got a little bit of dental work done,
Again.
but good news. Doctor only said it was going to be like a 10-day recovery time, and then everything's all good. So, hey.
It just means that talking for an extended period might be painful, so you might get a guest reader for a few days.
It's good because I need to read more books. My little brain's all shriveled up, and Jules Verne is here to plump it with his Nemos and his long words. Yeah, plump it up.
Yeah.
Should have made one of these characters Sonic. Still time. If you want me to voice one of these characters as Sonic the Hedgehog, get in the comments. But, is there anything else? It's beautiful
we toured
outside.
the Nautilus in yesterday's chapter.
And today we toured the woods.
Well, in real life.
Well, yeah. I don't think that we could tour Nemo's Nautilus. I don't think I'd want to.
No, I would.
He doesn't let you leave.
Yeah, but it sounds pretty.
It sounds really pretty, but I don't want to live in Captain Nemo's McMansion at the bottom of the sea. I like trees.
That's true.
I like kelp. I like trees.
Kelp are sea trees.
I like dirt. There's no dirt underwater. That's all mud. And silt.
And sand.
Do you like sand? But sand's also above the water. But I think that it's about the right time for us to get into the book. Now that we've talked about water and sand and dirt. All of the things that I know, associate with the ocean.
Title? Author, chapter.
You're so right. And so, as we go in, we're going to be reading Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. We'll be reading Chapter 12, An Invitation. Now, Professor, said Captain Nemo, we will, if you please, take our bearings and fix the starting point of this voyage. It wants 11:45. I'm going up to the surface of the water. The captain pressed an electric bell 3 times. The pumps began to drive the water out of the reservoirs. The needle on the manometer? Manometer. So that you can, tell how many mans you've gone down. My favorite distance measurement is dudes. As the needle of the manometer marked by different pressures the upward movement of the Nautilus. The pumps began to drive the water out of the reservoirs. The needle of the manometer marked by different pressures the upward movement of the Nautilus. Then it stopped. We have arrived, said the captain. We went to the central staircase which led up to the platform, climbed up the iron steps, and found ourselves on top of the Nautilus. The platform was only 3 feet out of the water. I noticed the iron plates of the Nautilus slightly overlaid each other, like the scales on the body of our large terrestrial reptiles. I well understood how, in spite of the best glasses, this boat should have been taken for a marine animal. Towards the middle of the platform, the boat, half sunk in the vessel, formed a slight excrescence. Fore and aft rose 2 cages of medium height, with inclined sides, and partly enclosed by thick lenticular glasses. In the one was the helmsman who directed the Nautilus, and the other a powerful electric lantern that lighted up his course. The sea was beautiful, the sky pure, and the long vessel could hardly feel the broad undulations of the ocean. A slight breeze from the east rippled the surface of the water, and the horizon was quite clear, making observation easy. There was nothing in sight, not a rock nor an island, no Abraham Lincoln, nothing but a waste of waters. Captain Nemo took the altitude of the sun with his sextant to get his latitude. He waited some minutes till the planet came on a level with the edge of the horizon. Whilst he was observing, not one of his muscles moved, and the instrument would not have been more in motion in the hand of marble. It is noon, Professor. When you are ready. I cast a last look at the sea, slightly yellowed by the Japanese coast, and went down again to the saloon. There the captain made his point and calculated his longitude. Then he said to me, Monsieur Arnaud, we're about 300 miles from the coast of Japan. Today, the 8th of November at noon, our voyage of exploration under the waters begins. Gods preserve us, I answered. And now, Professor, added the captain, I leave you to your studies. I have given E&E. If anybody in the comments knows what capital E&E means as a route, feel free to let me know. I have given E&E as our route at a depth of 50 yards. Here are maps on a large scale on which we can follow. The saloon is at your disposal, and I ask your permission to withdraw. Captain Nemo bowed to me. I remained alone, absorbed in my thoughts. All of them referred to the commander of the Nautilus. Should I ever know what nation belonged the strange man who boasted of belonging to none? This hatred which he had vowed to humanity, this hatred which perhaps sought terrible means of revenge, what had provoked it? I could not yet say. I, whom hazard just cast upon his vessel, I whose life he held in his hands, he had received me coldly, but with hospitality. Only he had never taken the hand I had held out to him. He had never held out his own to me. For the whole hour I remained buried in those reflections, seeking to pierce the mystery that interested me so greatly. Then my eyes fell upon the vast planisphere on the table, and I placed my finger on the very spot where we lay presently. Just then Ned Land and Conseil appeared at the door of the saloon. My two companions were petrified at the sight of the marvels spread out before their eyes. "Where are we? Where are we?" cried out the Canadian. "At Quebec Museum?" "If monsieur would allow me to say so," replied Conseil, "it is more like the Hotel du Sommerard." "My friends," said I, making them a sign to enter, "you are neither in Canada nor France, but on board the Nautilus, at more than 25 fathoms below sea level." "We must believe what monsieur says," replied Conseil. "But really, this saloon is enough to astonish even a Dutchman like..." "He's a Dutchman? Conseil's a Dutchman? At no point did you think to say that, Jules?" "He's supposed to be Dutch? What's a Dutch accent sound like, I wonder?" If you know what a Dutch accent sounds like, I don't think you can write it in the comments, but feel free to let me know. We can leave all this in because it's funny. The Dutchman. Marvel and look, Conseil, for there is enough for such a good classifier as you to do here. There was no need for me to encourage Conseil. The worthy fellow, leaning over the cases, was already muttering words in the language of naturalists. During this time, Ned Land, who was not much of interest in conchology, questioned me about my interview with Captain Nemo. Had I discovered who he was, from whence he came, whither he was going, and to what depths he was dragging us? In short, 1,000 questions, to which I had not the time to answer. I told him all I knew, or rather all I did not know, and I asked him what he had heard and seen on his side. "I've seen nothing, heard nothing," answered the Canadian. "I've not even perceived the ship's crew. But you, Monsieur Arnaud, can you tell me how many men there are on board? Are there 10, 20, 50, 100? "I know no more than you, Mr. Land. It's better to abandon at present all ideas of either taking possession of the Nautilus or escaping from it. This vessel is a masterpiece of modern industry, and I should regret not to have seen it. Many people would accept our position only to move amidst such marvels. The only thing to do is to keep quiet and watch what passes around us." "Watch!" exclaimed the harpooner. "But there's nothing to watch. We can't see anything in this iron prison. We're moving along blindfolded." Ned Land had scarcely uttered these words when it became suddenly dark. The light in the ceiling went out, and so rapidly that my eyes ached with change, in the same way as they do from the passage from profound darkness into the most brilliant light. We remained mute and did not stir, not knowing what surprise, agreeable or disagreeable, awaited us. But a sliding noise was heard. It was as if the panels of the Nautilus were being It's as if the panels of the Nautilus were being drawn back in its sides. It's the end of all things, said Ned Land. Suddenly, light appeared on the other side of the saloon through two oblong openings. The liquid mass appeared vividly lighted up by the electric effluence. Two crystal panes separated us from the sea. At first I shuddered at the thought that this feeble partition might break, but strong copper bands bound it, giving an almost infinite power of resistance. The sea was distinctly visible for a mile around the Nautilus. What a spectacle! What pen could describe it? Who could paint the effect of the light through the transparent sheets of water and the softness of its successive gradations from the lower to upper beds of the ocean? The Nautilus did not seem to be moving. It was because there were no landmarks. Sometimes, however, the lines of water, furrowed by her prow, flowed before our eyes with excessive speed. Lost in wonder, we stood before these windows, and none of us had broken this silence of astonishment when Conseil said, "Well, friend Ned, you wanted to look? Well, now you see." We're deciding to go a little bit less French now that we know he's Dutch. "It is curious," exclaimed the Canadian, who, forgetting his anger and projects of flight, was under the influence of an irresistible attraction. "Who wouldn't come for the sake of such a sight?" "Now I understand the man's life," I exclaimed. "He has made a world of marvels for himself." "But I don't see any fish," said the Canadian. "What does it matter to you, friend Ned?" answered Conseil, "since you know nothing about them." "I, a fisherman?" cried Ned. And thereupon a dispute arose between the two friends, for each had their knowledge of fish, though in a very different way. "Well, friend Conseil," said the harpooner eventually, leaning against the glass panel, "there are some varieties passing now." "Yes, some fish!" cried Conseil. "It's like being at an aquarium." "No," I answered, "for an aquarium is only a cage, and these fish are as free as birds in the air." "Well now, Conseil, tell me their names. Tell me their names," said Ned Land. "I could not do it. That is my master's business." And in fact, the worthy fellow, though an enthusiastic classifier, was not a naturalist. And I do not know if he could have distinguished a... Sorry. You're gonna love this sentence, chat. I do not know if he could have distinguished a tunny fish from a bonito. Jules, do you mean a tuna? You call him tunny fish? That's real cute, That's real cute, Jules. Like a little tunny fish. Books. The Canadian, on the contrary, named them all without hesitation. "A baluster," said I. "And a Chinese baluster," answered Ned. "Genus of the balusters, family of the..." Sorry, this is Conseil. "Genus of the balusters, family of the scleroderms, order of the plectognaths," muttered Conseil. Decidedly, between them, Ned Land and Conseil would have been a distinguished... Between them, Ned Land and Conseil would have made a distinguished naturalist. For 2 hours, a whole aquatic army escorted the Nautilus. Our admiration was excited to the highest pitch. Ned named the fish, Conseil classified them, and I was delighted with their vivacity and the beauty of their forms. I had never been in my lot to see these animals living free and natural in their element. I shall not cite all the varieties that passed before our dazzled eyes, all that collection from Japanese and Chinese seas. More numerous than the birds of the air, these fish swam around us, doubtless attracted by the electric light. Suddenly light again appeared in the saloon, and the iron panels were closed. The enchanting vision was disappeared, but long after that I was still dreaming. I expected Captain Nemo, but he did not appear. The clock was on the stroke of 5, Ned Land and Conseil returned to their cabin, and I regained my room. I passed the evening reading, writing, and thinking, until sleep overpowered me, and I stretched myself on my Zostera couch and slept profoundly whilst the Nautilus glided rapidly along. The next day, the 9th of November, I awoke after a long sleep that lasted some 12 hours. Conseil came, as was his custom, to ask how Monsieur had passed the night, and to offer his services. He had left his friend the Canadian sleeping like a man who had never done anything else in his life. I let the brave fellow chatter on in his fashion, without troubling to answer him much. I was anxious about the absence of Captain Nemo during our spectacle the evening before, and I hoped to see him again that day. I was soon clothed in my business garments. Their nature provoked many reflections from Conseil. I told him they were manufactured with the lustrous and silky filaments which fasten a sort of shell, very abundant on the shores of the Mediterranean, to the rocks. When I was dressed, I went to the saloon. It was utterly deserted, and I plunged myself into the study of conchological treasures piled up in the cases. I ransacked the great herbals filled with the rarest marine plants, which, though dried up, retained their lovely colors. The whole day passed without my being honored by a visit from Captain Nemo. The panels of the saloon were not open. Perhaps they did not wish to get tired of such beautiful things. The next day, the 10th of November, the same desertion, the same solitude. I did not see one of the ship's crew. Ned and Conseil passed the greater part of the day with me, though. They were astonished at the inescapable absence of the captain. Was the singular man ill? Did he mean to alter his plans about us? After all, as Conseil said, we enjoyed complete liberty. We were delicately and abundantly fed. Our host kept to the terms of his treaty. We could not complain. And besides, the singularity of our destiny reserved us such compensations that we had no right to accuse it. That day I began to account these adventures, which allowed me to relate them with the utmost scrupulous exactness and curious detail. I wrote it on paper made with marine zostera. Early in the morning of the 11th of November, fresh air spread over the interior of the Nautilus and told me that we were again on the surface of the ocean to renew our supply of oxygen. I went to the central staircase and ascended it to the platform. It was 6 a.m. The weather was cloudy, the sea gray but calm. There was scarcely any swell. I hoped to meet Captain Nemo there. Would he come? I only saw the helmsman in his glass cage, seated in the upper portion of the hull, but I drank in the sea breeze with great delight. Little by little the clouds disappeared under the action of the sun's rays. The clouds announced the wind for all that day, but the wind was no concern for the Nautilus. I was admiring this joyful sunrise, so gay and reviving, when I heard someone coming up the platform. I prepared to address Captain Nemo, but it was his mate, whom I had already seen during the captain's first visit, who appeared. He did not seem to perceive my presence, and with his powerful glass he swept the horizon, after which he approached the stair-head and called out some words which I reproduced exactly, for every morning they were uttered under the same conditions. They were the following: Natron respect lorni vich. What those words meant, I know not. After pronouncing them, the mate went below again, and I supposed that the Nautilus was going to continue her submarine course. I therefore followed the mate and regained my room. 5 days thus passed and altered nothing in our position. Each morning I ascended the platform. The same sentence was pronounced by the same individual. Captain Nemo did not appear. I had made up my mind that I was not going to see him again, when on the 16th of November, on entering my room with Ned Land and Conseil, I found a note directed to me upon the table. I opened it with impatient fingers. It was written in a bold and clear hand. To Professor Arnaud, on board the Nautilus, November 16th, 1867. Captain Nemo invites Professor Arnaud to a hunt, which will take place tomorrow morning in the forest of the island of Crespo. He hopes nothing will prevent the professor from joining in, and he will have much pleasure in seeing his companions also. The commander of the Nautilus, Captain Nemo. "A hunt!" cried Ned. "And in the forests of Crespo Island!" "Then that fellow does land sometime." "Oh, sorry, that's still Ned." "Then that fellow does land sometimes," said Ned Land. "It looks like it," said I, reading the letter again. "Well, we must accept," replied the Canadian. Once on land, we can decide what to do. Besides, I shall not be sorry to eat some fresh meat. I consulted the planisphere as to the whereabouts of the island of Crespo, and pointed out to my companions the little rock lost in the middle of the North Pacific. If Captain Nemo does land sometimes, I said, he at least chooses quite deserted islands. Ned Land shrugged his shoulders without speaking, and he and Conseil left me. After supper, which was served by the mute steward, I went to bed, not without some anxiety. The next day, 17th of November, when I awoke, I felt that the Nautilus was perfectly still. I dressed quickly and went to the saloon. Captain Nemo was there waiting for me. He rose, bowed, and asked me if it was convenient for me to accompany him. As he made no allusion to his 8 days' absence, I abstained from speaking of it, and I answered simply that my companions and I were ready to follow him. "May I ask you, Captain," I said, "how is it that, having broken all ties with Earth, you possess forests in Crespo Island?" "Professor," answered the captain, "my forests are not terrestrial forests, but submarine forests." "Submarine forests?" I exclaimed. "Yes, Professor." "And you offer to take me to them?" "Precisely." "On foot?" "But how shall we hunt? Oh, apologies. Yes, and dry-footed, too." "But how shall we hunt? With a gun?" "Yes, with a gun." I thought the captain had gone mad, and the idea was expressed on my face, but he only invited me to follow him like a man resigned to anything. We entered the dining room where breakfast was laid. "Monsieur Arnaud," said the captain, "will you share my breakfast without ceremony? We will talk as we eat. You will not find a restaurant in our walk through the forest. Breakfast like a man who will probably dine very late." I did honor the meal. Captain Nemo went on eating at first without saying a word. Then he said to me, "When I invited you to hunt in my submarine forest, Professor, you thought I was mad. You judged me too lightly. You know as well as I do that man can live underwater, providing he takes with him provisions of air to breathe. When submarine work has to be done, the workman, clad in impervious dress, with his head in a metal helmet, receives air from above with the means of pumps and regulators." "Then it is a diving apparatus?" "Yes. I have adapted current inventions to construct a diving suit, equipped with enough compressed air for 9 to 10 hours and with a source of illumination for the dark places of the ocean floor. Thus provided, I breathe and see." "But Captain Nemo, what sort of gun do you use?" "It is not a gun for powder, but an air gun." "But it seems to me that in the half-light and amidst liquids so much more dense than the atmosphere, bodies cannot be projected far, and are not easily mortal." "Sir, with these guns every shot is mortal, and as soon as the animal is touched, however slightly, it falls crushed." "Why?" "Because they are not ordinary bullets. We use little glass percussion caps, of which I have considerable provisions. These glass caps, covered with steel, and weighted with a leaden bottom, are really little bulbs in which electricity is forced to a very high tension. At the slightest shock they go off, and the animal, however powerful, falls dead." "I will argue no longer," I replied, rising from the table. The only thing left me is to take my gun. Besides, where you go, I will follow." Captain Nemo then led me to the aft of the Nautilus, and whilst passing the cabin of Ned and Conseil, I called my 2 companions, who followed me immediately. Then we came to a kind of cell situated near the engine room, in which we were to put on our walking dress. Oh, that was the end of the chapter. Wow, they really just kind of cut it off there at the end.
That's a cliffhanger.
Isn't it? We're going out for a walk in the water? Not gonna lie, I'd do that. That sounds sweet.
Not gonna lie, all I can think of is there's a zone in World of Warcraft that's entirely underwater.
Ooh, I'm excited
like,
to
oh
see
my
that.
gosh, is this Star Trek or World of Warcraft now?
I mean, it's Kind of both.
It is kind of
Not to
both.
say that in World of Warcraft there aren't spaceships flying around, so
That's
I'm sure they
true.
probably have submarines somewhere.
They do, I'm sure.
Can you imagine a bunch of Draenei on a submarine?
Oh, I'm more envisioning gnomes.
Sorry, I was thinking about a goblin submarine. Truly nothing good could come of it. Except for a lot of drowned goblins. But that's for our gaming friends. If you don't know what I'm talking about and you don't care about goblins and gnomes except for the ones that live in your yard, that's extremely valid. Send me pictures of your garden gnomes.
That was a very good chapter.
It was a very good chapter.
I enjoyed that chapter.
It's also very funny considering most of the chapter was Arnaud wandering around in the saloon being like, when will Captain Nemo return to me? Jules, what's the relationship between these two? Because I'm sorry, Monsieur Arnaud, but you seem to be pining awful hard after this very, very studly Captain Nemo.
Yeah.
If you ship Captain Nemo and Monsieur Arnaud, get in the comments.
Nemo.
Nemo?
Nemo.
Arnemo?
Arnemo.
Arnemo. Hashtag Arnemo.
Oh, I love it.
Beautiful. Well, if you enjoyed this, like, comment, and subscribe. Oh.
Don't forget that tomorrow night there will not be a chapter. There is a live stream instead. If you would like to come and join me, I'm going to try to stumble my way through talking through it.
And we'll be there, both me and Soleil, in the background making lots of crude but non-swearing jokes, hopefully.
Forks and knives.
Forks and knives.
Anyway, thank
Hazel,
you
just
so
imagine
much.
that it says forks and knives at the bottom here. All right. Well, until next time, you all have a great day. Like, comment, subscribe. Hit that bell icon if you want to get notifications when new videos are coming out. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye!